We take it for granted that a musician's brand is as central to her success as her music. But it wasn't always that way. Back in the 1970s, branding was still a new idea, pioneered by hard rock Svengalis like legendary manager Shep Gordon. In his new memoir, They Call Me Supermensch, Gordon recounts one of the craziest brand-building capers in the history of rock and roll.
I didn't care about the rock critics. I wanted to get all the parents in the world hating Alice Cooper. And the parents weren't reading Rolling Stone or Cream. Rolling Stone meant nothing to us. We had to jump over the rock meteor and get Alice in Newsweek and Time and Business Week and the newspapers and tabloids and evening news, all the places where the parents would see him and be revolted by him. That's how I came up with the idea of wrapping panties around the vinyl in the packaging of Alice's album, School's Out. It started because I read a story about a big shipment of paper panties being confiscated by U.S. Customs officials at the port of Baltimore because they violated something called the Flammable Fabrics Act. That you couldn't bring paper underwear into the country struck me as hysterical. Then, when we were designing the jacket for School's Out, we decided it should look like an old-fashioned wooden school desk, the kind where the top flipped up and there was space underneath for your pencils and rulers and such. The album would go in there, and we were thinking about what to put in there with it, something a bad kid would have in his desk. Someone suggested a switchblade, but obviously we couldn't do that. Someone else said bubblegum. I remembered the panties. What was the coolest thing a 7th grade boy could be hiding in his desk? What if we wrapped paper panties around every copy of the LP that went out? Parents everywhere were sure to hate us. So I bought perfectly legal, flame-proof paper panties in Canada and slipped the panties onto the albums. At the same time, I called up a friend of mine, Tom Zito, a big writer at the Washington Post. I told him I had a great story for him if he could get it on page 1. I explained that these panties were being shipped to Warner Brothers for Alice's album, and if Customs found out, they were going to seize them under the Flammable Fabrics Act. I gave him the shipment number and everything he needed. I bought an additional 100,000 not flame-proof paper panties made in France and had them shipped to Warner Brothers Records. It wasn't a huge outlay of cash, just a few pennies each. When they came through the port of Baltimore, Customs confiscated them, and Tom was there to write the story. His article ran on page 1 of the Washington Post with a headline about the largest panty raid in history, explaining that the panties were supposed to be wrapped around Alice Cooper's new LP, School's Out, which was coming out that week. Other papers picked it up, and that's how parents throughout the land learned not only that this outrageous Alice Cooper had a new album coming out, but that it was supposed to be wrapped in panties. How disgusting. It was one of my greatest PR coups. Warner Brothers was furious with me. They thought all the panties wrapped around the albums were flammable, and that they were going to have to pull the albums from the stores and remove the panties. They'd be out millions. I let everyone know the truth, Warners, the distributors, the stores, and they all calmed down. I like telling this story because it's a good example of my modus operandi, creating history instead of waiting for it to happen.